for the marketing firm Dixon Eaton. Recently, she made the leap into the nonprofit sector and currently oversees all of the external marketing efforts for the Centers for Family and Children, a $44 million multi-service health and human service organization. Her focus is on creating a digital strategy that allows for the organization to connect with multiple audiences, including donors, volunteers, community members, clients, and potential new hires. Please join me in welcoming Amy Martin.
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. I was joking with Rick that I looked at the panel that was going on at the same time and was very fearful that no one would be in my session because it looked very entertaining. But so I was thrilled to be asked to come here today. And before I started, I was just wondering how many people in the room are in the nonprofit sector. So I just thought that I would explain a little bit about me because I had a different take in coming to nonprofits. So the slide up there, the title we'll get to, but I have never been somebody, I'll be very blunt, who saw myself going into the nonprofit sector. It just wasn't really where I thought I would ever go. And that leads a little bit about kind of me. So for me, I was always a consultant and always on the road. I started my career in Chicago, working for Porter Novelli and Leo Burnett and Fleischman Hillard. And then I had an opportunity to go in-house to a global pharmaceutical company, which was amazing. Spent most of my time in Japan and did a lot of marketing and communications for the pharma company, where that was right at the time when social media was beginning. They were still working out the guidelines with FDA, and I was able to really, become a part of that. And that was fabulous. And then something happened along the way that I got married, and I inherited 2 wonderful children with the marriage who are now a part of me. I call them my son and my daughter because they are in every way. And I realized that being on planes, trains, and automobiles for 80% of my life was not the most ideal situation. So I came back to Cleveland to raise a family, jumped back into the consulting world, and was having a blast when there was a very interesting challenge that came my way. I was doing some nonprofit and pro bono work for a nonprofit called the Center for Families and Children, which is the middle logo. At the time, that was the company. And I was doing some work with them, and after a while they came and saw me after they had gone through an official merger with Westside Ecumenical Ministry and El Barrio, which is a Hispanic workforce development agency. And they said to me, this is our logo, and we don't really have a name, and this is a combined tagline. And would you be interested in coming and doing some work with us for marketing? And it was one of those, moments in time when you have to really stand back and be thankful for a decision I made. But I really took on the challenge for the opportunity. And somewhere along the way, I fell in love with nonprofit. But I wanted to be honest, and that's not where it started with me. And I find that to be very lucky for how I've benefited from it. But the reason I took on the challenge was I knew, taking a step back from where I was in my career, I was probably never again going to have an opportunity to do everything, soup to nuts. So as consultants, you have a web team, you have a strategy team, you have a communications and a writing team. And so I was always a project manager and very much a driver and the strategic mind, but I had been out of doing a lot of the work and kind of building from the ground up for a long time. And I realized that this was something that I'd probably never have an opportunity to do again. So that's kind of where my role really stepped in, and I jumped in, and I wanted to show you kind of how we launched our new brand, our new name, to the community, to our staff, and to our clients, which is still an ongoing, it's an ongoing movement because this just happened at the end of September last year. So bear with me, they promised me technology would work at this. Okay.
might be able to scroll down. Might be
There we go.
Yep.
Thank you. How old are you? So, it was a brand new day, which is what we joked around about, but it really was. And so what we had to start with, because we had 3 agencies, that while we had aligned missions, we were very different. Westside Ecumenical Ministry is obviously faith-based. The Center for Families and Children, the CEO was Jewish, and El Barrio was Hispanic. So when we were all in the same room, while we had a very similar mission and drive, there were a lot of things that were not aligned. And so we decided, when I was driving the communication strategy, instead of trying to say, like in a typical way, let's come up with our mission, let's come up with our vision, we decided to agree on what we believed. And that's still where we are actually today. But that led us to, we believe lasting positive change begins with access to opportunities, because all of us were in the Health and Human Service Organization. And that together we were going to bridge the opportunity gap by connecting as many people as possible to effective healthcare, education, and essential human services. And that really became what we decided together. And then there were all different pockets of that, of where our services lie. There was about poverty, everyone deserves hope, dignity, and purpose, the chance to build a better future, the keys to success start with access to the resources, and it is possible to break out of individual and intergenerational cycles of poverty. And then finally, successful communities embrace diversity and inclusion as a competitive advantage. And that was really kind of what we launched all of our platforms with our new agency. And then we had to come up with a tagline, which we ended up with, We Go Further. There's a couple agencies in town who have slightly stolen it, but I will let that go. And the way that we wanted to go further was with health and wellness, education and connections. And then we really kind of used Prezi and presentations like this to build it out with our services for what we wanted to provide to our community. So it was a very interesting time to really state our strategic plan to the community. We had a very large launch meeting. The Brown Stadium actually gave us their space for free, and we packed the house with our employees and launched it. No one had seen it for 6 months. So it was a very emotional day for all of our employees, for people who felt like they lost their old brand and really had to find their new connection. But it was also a start of a really cool day. And the rebrand was done through a lot of research, inclusive, inside and out, and we had many external and internal boards that we worked off of. So, and we used everything that we heard to come up with our new name, which is the Centers for Families and Children. You may say that's not very different, but we really do refer to ourselves as now the Centers. For Families and Children will eventually drop off, probably in the next year or so. And then we came up with a new logo. And the logo really is a mixture of things, but the main concept came from 3 different ways that people saw it. One was a lot of people saw it as a bridge, which is very true, because that is what we do, is we bridge opportunity. A lot of our board members saw it as an upward progressive arrow, which is true. Again, we move our clients forward. And then a lot of our staff, which was endearing, saw it as more of a home or a safe haven, which again is true. So we decided that we don't truly define our logo. If you fall into one of these buckets when you see it, we're really happy. So that was our official name and our launch. And then coming from the nonprofit world, and this is where hopefully I can talk to you guys a lot today, was we did not have a huge budget, but we had a huge message to deliver. So collectively as an organization, we serve 20,000 people in Cuyahoga County. So we have 18 locations, and we have 500 employees. We have roughly 18 funders and probably 27 community partners. So, a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi would have no problem getting this message out, but as you can imagine, a nonprofit, it's a challenge. The signage alone for 18 locations is something we're still funding and working But we knew that we had one shot, as you all know, in a launch, to get it out. And so we invested in 2 ways, which I would love to show you. The first is a video. Oops, here's our tagline. So that was one of the biggest investments we made around the launch. And that was something that at the time our board and our executive team really were against when I presented it, as you can imagine, because how many of you in here know a ballpark how much a video like that will cost? So I'll be very honest, $10,000 is what we paid for that video. And that was with a pro bono discount. So, and I will give credit to where credit is due. Little Jacket is the firm that we work with. I don't know if any of you are from the Cleveland area and know them, but they are amazing. And that was another key part of me being able to do what I wanted. I came from Dixon Eaton. I have very good friends at AdCom, and Marcus Thomas, and had reached out to all of them, but I wanted to find an agency that let me lead the process, because I felt like the CEO and the board took a very big chance on bringing somebody like me in. And so we really kind of went at this together. We were drawing together, filming together, because I really wanted to do it from the bottom up. And so I have to give them a lot of credit, because not everybody wants to see me as much as they saw me every day. But the video was very powerful. It was very powerful for our staff, and that was really what I sold into our board, was that if we can't bring our staff along to understand where we're going and why we really came together, we are never going to convince our community, and we are never going to convince our clients. And so this video, actually, at the end of our employee launch, while the employee launch was very quiet and pins and needles and a little bit of crying and a little bit of emotion, by the end of the video, a lot of people stood up and clapped. And that's kind of where the embracing started, because I think they realized the name doesn't matter. We're still doing what we've always done, which was the most important for me too. So that's where we ended with the name and how we launched it. So then, there we go. So when we got to having the name and the logo and the tagline, we really had to get to rebuilding platforms. So the original center, Ed Wesson and El Barrio, all had Facebook, all had websites, all had different levels of marketing materials that were quite horrifying, but it was what they had to do to get by with the budgets they had. And we had a very short amount of time to get materials printed, to get a website up, and to get our social channels handled. And we were really being pushed by the board to present this. And this is, again, one of those defining moments where I had a really strong CEO who listened to me and partnered with me, and let me say that this was not a time to throw up a Facebook page or to create a website that had our new logo and a great brand video and then a bunch of text about what we were doing in the community. And we got a lot of pushback again for that. They made me do a lot of data analysis and presentations, but it was well worth it. But as most of you know in the room, Facebook does not solve your problem. And for nonprofits, I would actually like to say that it does very little. But it is still a powerful tool. It just had to be thought through. And that's really where defining the platforms came about. And I told you I did a lot of presentations on demographics to them. I talked through what this meant. And while we needed to be out there, we needed to be visual, and we needed to be connecting, we had to do it in a smart and effective way. So the centers, collectively, again, is a very large nonprofit organization. The things that we focus on are very high impact, right? So you're talking about healthcare for the mentally ill and Medicaid, which is the #1 reason our healthcare system is where it is today. You're talking about education, and if you've seen the news with Cleveland, it's not a good state, and we are impacting and trying to transform the early learning years. And then you're talking about workforce development, another economic driver. So these are not necessarily small issues. So I did feel that there was going to be a microscope on us about what we were doing, how we were talking about it, and actually how we were using our money to go about it. So I was very forceful in my beliefs and how we should go about it. And again, I was very lucky that I had a CEO that supported me. We did reach out to a firm, Rosetta. Is anyone in here from Rosetta? I saw, oh, there you are. I was looking for you. There you are. We have a board member who is a part of Rosetta, which is a digital agency. And they agreed to lend us their interns for the summer, which is amazing. And for as long as we had their interns, we had free work, which meant that I didn't sleep or eat for 3 months, which was fun because I knew the second they left, we were going to be on the hook for a very large check. But it allowed us to create something that I'm still extremely proud of today, which is, I believe, an amazing website. But a website that was very thought through. It was not something that we took lightly. And again, who told me I didn't say something? Yeah, see, I don't think it's gonna let me. But
There's a couple arrows in the top right-hand corner. That might do it.
So we went through a ton of design concepts. I actually ended up drawing most of this and working with Rosetta myself, because I think that, again, that was just something that I wanted to do. And the one thing that Rosetta was very understanding about, and this was the main objective for me, was that it was very socially engaging, so that our social media channels, and we're actually under construction right now adding more channels off to the right, a blog and Instagram and Pinterest, but that social media was embedded in our website. It was not something you had to click to get out and open another window, but it was actually embedded in our site. I'm just a firm believer of that. I think it drives the engagement process. And then, just coming up with our events, and then really helping us, differentiate who we are. So I won't bore you with all of that, but I will say that thanks to Rosetta, we had a website that was phenomenal, and we felt very lucky about that, and still do. How do I get out of this, young man?
Steve should do it.
I know, that's what I'm heading.
If you go back to the top and put your cursor up there.
There.
Yeah,
Put your
scroll
cursor.
to the top. There's an
Now all the
angle.
way over on the right.
Sorry, I'm a PC person. Okay, so that was our website, and that was what we, started with. That was where we landed. We made sure the video was in there, and that was live for launch day. So then we moved on to our social channels. And again, this is where I think we are still living in this time, just so you know. So I'm one marketing person, again, with 500 employees, 18 locations, 7 different service lines. And I will tell you that the #1 question I get asked about is our social media. Not about, can you help us create a brochure? Can you help us get a sign? Can you help us do a video? It's, what am I supposed to be doing on Twitter? And I always tell them, please don't do anything on Twitter. We will do everything we need to do on Twitter. But so we really took a hard approach that our Twitter page was going to be very much advocacy involved, and it still is today. And I'm very happy with where we are from a Twitter standpoint. I feel like we have made a lot of headway with where we are. Let me see if I can remember. Maybe I should not be doing this anymore, but so we have almost, close to 700 followers. We're following quite a bit, but the key for us is engagement. So we have been very focused on engaging the county, the state, and federal contacts. I'm a big believer in clout. While I don't believe that clout is necessarily accurate in what exactly it tells you from an influencer rate, I believe it does help you kind of narrow the scope. So if you've ever taken a look at all the people on Twitter, it's really hard to kind of narrow that down. And so I do use clout constantly. It has been a huge helper for us. But we are constantly engaging on Twitter. We are constantly asking people questions and really engaging in those conversations. We are actively commenting on blogs and following blogs, and really, again, our process that my CEO and I have agreed on is that we are not preachers. We certainly don't believe that our way is the only way, but that our true engagement process and the way we go about it is to ask questions that can change a conversation and have an impact. So that's really what we have done on Twitter, and that's where I spend most of my time, is really building up the Twitter channel. So any questions on Twitter right now?
Just a quick question, like on your overall social platforms, are you guys targeting different audiences, like
Yes.
with Twitter and Facebook and
Yeah.
the blog? Can you talk about a little bit how you choose to?
Yes, so I kind of went over what we just did with Twitter, right? Oh God, let's see. So now, let me show you, and this is where I think a lot of you are probably going to disagree with me. But Twitter, again, was very advocacy focused for us. And that our goal for that is, again, impact. So we are in a time where Medicaid expansion, Medicaid health homes, those are all being discussed, and it's fluxing day to day. And we truly believe that we have a voice in this process because of how large we are. So we look at Twitter as an extension of that. It is an extension of our advocacy work. So that is our channel for that. That's government, it is partners, so the Cleveland Clinic, Metro Health, University Hospitals, all three are very large partners for us. We have the Cleveland Clinic performing primary care services in our building, so we engage with them, we partner with them. I am in constant contact with their communications team, and we work together a lot on Twitter. And that is something that, again, I believe in. I believe that you cannot have one single strategy on Twitter and move the mark unless you literally have somebody who is sitting in front of a computer all day, and I'm the only person who does Twitter from our firm, so from our organization. So that is the view of Twitter in my mind. Facebook. So I will tell you that I don't believe Facebook adds a tremendous value to our organization. And however, I know that it's very important to our employees, and it's also important to a lot of our clients. As in, it's a very good, feel-good process that we do. And at first, when I started working on our Facebook page, I really actually tried to change this, right? I felt that I was smart enough, I understood social media well enough, that Facebook was really going to drive our events, drive donations, drive volunteerism, and kind of be the other side of the house. So we were going to be advocating on Twitter, and then on Facebook, we were going to really be reaching the community, getting those conversations going, driving our events, driving volunteerism, and really seeing the impact to our site, to, I was watching Google Analytics very closely to see how many clicks we were getting over. And the bottom line is that is not the case for us. We have a very large following on Facebook. So we have 623 likes since October 1st. We're very active. We do a lot of posts with photos and liking other agencies that are friends with us. But I will tell you, and I found this extremely interesting, that, for instance, right over here, this photo was just announcing chances for our volunteers to come in and read with kids, right? So it's a very feel-good post. Come in, read with a child, make your day better. We had, I think, 4 or 5 likes on that. When I posted a random picture of eggs on Easter that I stole off of Instagram because I thought it was beautiful, I believe we had something like 35 likes for just saying Happy Easter. So as you can imagine, some of the people where I work are thrilled with that. That annoys me to no end, right? Because when you like us on Facebook because I posted a great picture, I love that that we engaged you and that you liked the photo, but Facebook is not doing what I had hoped it would do for us. And so when I tried different tactics and tried to shift it a little bit, it never did. And I just had to realize that that was okay. It still serves a good purpose. It doesn't serve my purpose in marketing, but I think it does very well for our teachers. We have a teaching staff, I believe, of close to 200. They love it. We post a lot about our kids and the field trips that we take to Severance Hall. It does not drive attendance to our schools. We've tried that as well, and we're not there. And so you do have to, use common sense with it, which I have, is that we do work with a demographic that is at the lower economic scale. But again, as most of you know in this room, more people have cell phones and smartphones than they do mortgages. So I do know that doesn't deter them from being active online, but it does deter them from being active online with us on Facebook. So again, it was something I had to come to terms with and tell my CEO and my board that I still I'm happy with where we are because it's accomplishing something, but it's not accomplishing what I wanted it to. So any questions about that with Facebook? Has anybody else in the nonprofit world seen that or had a different experience?
Same thing. We held a contest we had 15 years of SARTA, SARTA celebrated 15 years of service back in November, and we had 4 days of events at each of our transit centers, engaging the riders. Each day we put a post starting on the first day of the event, and then went for 15 days to celebrate our anniversary. And it was just quirky little facts about SARTA, and if you either, and I had it posted to Facebook and Twitter. I wanted to see, so if you liked or shared or retweeted or whatever, your name went into a drawing, and you received SARTA-ware, basically. No one retweeted anything from Twitter, not one person. So we kind of dropped that.
And it was straight event focused?
No, this was not. This was just random facts.
Okay.
Just random information, nothing. It was mostly about SARTA, maybe our history,
right.
How we service the community, but it was related around us, but it wasn't, it was just random facts.
Right.
We did very well on Facebook because
coming in. So I will never disagree with anything that is converting 40% to our website.
How many employees do you have?
500.
So you're really talking about something for a larger organization then.
Absolutely.
LinkedIn.
And that's fair.
Can't see any need for LinkedIn with our 30-person.
That's fair. I would say that if you are a small nonprofit or a small organization, I think LinkedIn is exceptionally good for personal brand building, you know, for creating that, for that singular voice. You know, some people are not very comfortable with Twitter. It's a lot to get through, right? And you know, you have to be very engaged with your following, and that you do not have to do that with LinkedIn nearly as much. It's not as a high maintenance tool. So I do think that there's strong value if you are trying to promote someone in your company for, you know, engagement, or trying to garner other partnerships, or align yourself with other agencies. I think it's a good tool, but for us, it's the best recruitment tool we have. But it is based on our size. It's absolutely true.
You mentioned that you are handling the Twitter on your own, and that you've worked with some interns for other social media purposes. When you work,
Only interns for from Rosetta for our website. I don't let interns.
oh, those just for the
social
website.
media. Yeah.
Okay. Is all your social media platforms being managed internally?
They are by me, except LinkedIn.
So where's your time for?
So I don't
Google,
sleep, and that's very
and
true.
Instagram and Pinterest and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be very honest. So I am an insomniac, just in general. And if you ever take a look at the most time that we are posting, it is at night, because I don't have a ton of time. Hootsuite is a godsend. I'm sure some of you have used it a lot, and it allows you to go across the board and to be active in a lot of the channels. I try to block out 20 minutes in the morning whenever I have time to grab a bite and I'm in front of my computer towards the end of the day, and then I do a lot after my kids go to bed at night. I mean, that's just the way I handle it. It is not realistic. My CEO knows that, I know it. But right now, I don't trust anybody else doing it, because again, I firmly believe in the strategies that are behind it. And we don't have anybody right now that can do it. We don't have anybody right now within our organization that has the baseline knowledge for it. So
I was going to ask if the lack of resources, or that you just, it would take too much to get someone else up to speed on it, working externally with someone.
no, I mean, it is a future goal of ours. So you know, and that's something that I do want to talk to you guys about when I get towards the end of really how I do see marketing, social engagement, digital engagement, fundraising, recruiting, all of that really shifting. And it's something that I'm talking about with our CEO and with our board, and I think it's a very exciting time, and then we can touch on it there. But right now, yeah, I mean, it's, thank goodness there's platforms on your phone that allow you to have multiple accounts, and that allow you to manage, but by no doubt it is a hefty job to manage that as well. But you have to be very careful. You know, I'm sure all of you in the room have seen the really bad sides of letting somebody have your Twitter account that shouldn't be, with really good brands, right, that have made really bad mistakes. And being in a health and human service organization where we're dealing with the mentally ill, where we're dealing with children who are coming from really tough homes, that's not a risk I'm willing to take right now. So that's just kind of how I hold it close to the vest. So the next piece I wanted to talk about, I don't know if anybody in here has done this yet, but I have a very interesting relationship with my CEO. And she, Sharon Sokol Jordan is her name, and she is probably one of the smartest people I've ever met. And when we started doing the engagement, she was very interested in it and she loved it. And what we realized was she has a lot to say out in the community. She's looked to a lot for her voice. She was a lawyer with the county. She's extremely involved with a lot of things going on in Cleveland. And you know, she really has developed a thought process that is, I believe, is very unique for a nonprofit CEO, because she's not your typical CEO. She was a lawyer. And we have, you know, similar backgrounds of why we came into the nonprofit world. And so the more she and I started talking, and she wanted to really get involved with what we were doing on the brand side and our engagement strategy, we realized that she had her own platform. she really has a chance, again, because of her reputation, because of who she is, and her ties in Washington and with partners in Cleveland, that she should be out there on her own. And this was very interesting. I had a lot of people ask me if I write Sharon's blog, and I do not, hands down, no. And I've also, she's had many people in the community call her and ask her, there's no way you can have time to do this as a CEO, because I see you out all the time, there's no way you've found time for it. And I will tell you that if you don't work with someone on how much time is invested in this, it will not work. But she has done it. It is her personal brand. And I take a little bit of an issue with brands that have blogs, right? For the same reason that is up there, is that your brand is not human. And blogs are very much an opinionated voice, right? So it is your platform to talk about something that you believe in, to get your opinion out there. And I don't understand how a brand can do that. And I always wanted to engage in the blogger world, but when she jumped on board, it was great. Let me tell you, there is a huge risk with having CEOs blog. And that was something, again, that there was a ton of research that had to go into it. Any of you have CEOs who are blogging? Yep, and that's exactly where the fear factor was. So our board was, are you crazy? We are in a controversial time. We are in a very, we're being looked at again like a microscope. But we're also in a time of great importance, and my CEO believed that she had a lot to share. That way, that could really help, move the movement. So where I think the most important thing is, if you are working with a blogger that is in your industry, in your organization, you need to make sure that it's aligned, right? So if you were ever to go on my CEO's blog and there was no connect, I think that is a huge mistake. That means that your CEO is not connected to your organization, that there's a disconnect there. So I'm hoping that if you ever visit her blog, SybylJordan.com, that you will see that there's a lot that she blogs about that relates to what we do, but it's her opinion and her opinion alone. And she engages a lot of people, and she's had some great national coverage lately that we're really excited about, and it really has kind of, I think, opened doors for a different kind of engagement for our organization. So any questions about that with blogging?
How often does she blog?
We have set a tone for her, so she has to blog once a week. She does blog more than that at times. The part that I help her with is keeping up with things that are going on, that are trends. Because I'm on Twitter so much, it helps her, right? Because I see everything that's going on with Twitter. She, of course, is on Twitter. You have to be if you're blogging. There's no way else to get your blog out effectively. But again, she is a CEO, and she is way busier than I am. So we flag articles for each other and post. We watch, the ones that are very relevant in the media, the Harvard Business Review, the Stanford Social Innovation Review. So there's a lot that she's constantly replying on and participating on. But it is a time sucker. She knows that. She's committed to it, and I will tell you that I believe that is the only reason that it works. So
does she schedule her week? I'm just curious. Does she schedule actual time to do it, or does she fit it in? Because I think that's part of the key. She
shifted, right? So when she began, it was that she was going to schedule time, and we talked about it, we worked on it. But she's a mom, and she is a CEO, and she's a wife, and we all know how that happens. So a lot of the times that she has a 20-minute little window scheduled, it doesn't work. She does a lot of her blogging on the weekends. Yeah. So, any other questions with blogging? It's interesting. It's fascinating. But that kind of leads me to the last part of, what I wanted to share was, I do believe that we are in a very exciting time to be in a nonprofit. So has anybody seen Dan Pilato's speech on TED Talks about a different kind of charity? Anybody seen it? I beg you, if you're a nonprofit, to find it and to watch it, because it's amazingly insightful. And I do have it linked to my last slide, so if there's time, I can play a little bit of it. But he is a very nationally well-known expert. His name is Dan Pilatta, P-A-L-L-A-T-T-A, I believe. He was just in Cleveland speaking, and I got to meet him, and I was like, I was a giddy little kid, because I'm so impacted by what he has to say. But he began the AIDS rides, the bicycle rides. He also was behind the Susan G. Komen 3-day walk. And he has this wonderful presentation to show you about how successful his nonprofit was, right? So I believe 1 year alone, they were close to 80 million that they raised, which is phenomenal. And within 3 days, his charities were shut down. And they were shut down because they invest in a really bad word called overhead, right? Which I'm overhead, and most of you in this room are overhead if you are not actually providing services to clients or out in the community. And so he's taking a very hard stand about nonprofits are asked to literally change the world, right? So we're asked to end hunger. For us, we are asked to literally change the way people with mental illness are treated. So not allowing their the physical things that happen to them because they don't go to a primary care doctor take their lives 25 years earlier than you and me. These are huge scale problems. And this is what all of us are challenged to do. But we're challenged to do it with the littlest amount of overhead and the least amount of spend possible. But somebody like Coca-Cola and somebody like a pharmaceutical company who makes billions of dollars in revenue and puts it towards ads and puts it towards everything that often have not that great side effects, are not challenged whatsoever in that. And when you really think about that concept, it's perverse in nature. And we have escalated it. And Dan Pilatta, I'm stealing, trust me. I mean, I've felt it, but the way he says it is so powerful. But nonprofits, we embrace it and we take it on, right? So when we report out to our community and to our funders, we report 10% overhead and this amount of spend, and we highlight it in our annual reports as big as possible because we want them to see that we're being financially and fiscally responsible. But if we were being financially and fiscally, I think, effective, we would not have hunger. We would not have the issues that we have with mental illness. We would not have people that are homeless because we have the ability to stop that. There's no doubt about it that there are organizations, nonprofits right now that have the ability to end large-scale community issues, countrywide issues. But we don't allow ourselves, our funders don't allow it, and society doesn't allow it to spend the money to do it the right way. And so I think that we, again, are finally in that era, and this is why I was excited about my CEO to start blogging, where that is shifting. Because of people like Dan Pilatta, because he's not the only one. There's a ton of speakers out there right now talking about it. There's so many bloggers on the nonprofit side that are pushing out stories like this, that are going against it, that are finding new ways to get funding, that are changing terms. Nonprofit is just a stupid word, right? So, he said, stop calling it nonprofit, call it like humanitarian work, or call it something, because why shouldn't we make a profit to invest in the people that can change our world? And so for me, coming from the life that I had, being a consultant, having a very fast-paced, diverse client base, this is the most exciting time I've ever had in my career, because this is truly, I believe, a cultural shift, where you're gonna see organizations, hopefully like ours and all of yours, take a step forward for the first time in a very long time. And I'm thrilled to be a part of it. And I think that the digital space is gonna be the most effective space for us, because we are not in competition as much with the dollars And it has given the voice to the bloggers and to the Dan Pilatas of the world to raise a hand and say, we're not going to solve anything if we remain status quo. So that's it for me. So I didn't know if anybody had any questions about that. Yes.
Where do you get your funding from? And you use social media to help raise funds. How do you recruit volunteers and do you use social media to do that?
Okay, so our funding, we're a diverse model. So we have a lot of different funding levels. We're a part of the United Way bucket. We get money from the county and from the state and from the federal based on Medicaid and vouchers from education. But we also have a for-profit entity, actually a couple of them. So we have a for-profit group that is under our bucket that we generate our own funding. And we also operate our own pharmacies and our mental health clinics that turn over profit. And that was by design. When we started seeing about 10 years back the shifts of the funding starting to dwindle and more nonprofits competing for smaller and smaller buckets, the executive team at the time realized that this was the time to diversify our funding model. And if we didn't, we could be shutting our doors. So our funding is what keeps us alive and keeps us grounded. We're constantly looking for other ways to generate our own profit so that somebody doesn't tell us how to treat our clients.
So you're not a 501c3?
We are a 501c3.
You are? And
We are.
Are still profiting through some of your entities?
Yes, we are.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's now all of our for-profit entities that funnel the money into us 100% comes back in-house. There's nothing that's duplicated. So it is a process. It was something that was thought through and way before my time. But again, it's very prolific in nature when you see where we are right now, and you see that the investment that needs to be made. Again, coming from the for-profit world, to have somebody in Washington just wake up one day and tell you that you can't treat as many kids, you can't educate as many kids that are in Head Start, which means their families cannot afford preschool, just because they've decided so, is absolutely heart-wrenching. And when I could read you statistics about how that actually changes the projection of that child's life. When they hit kindergarten, their destiny is almost set. And so I think that is something that we have just decided is not acceptable. That allowing entities like the government to fully decide our fate is something we just can't take a risk on. And so we're constantly looking for ways to do it ourselves as well.
2 comments, or 1 question and a comment. What was Pilata's overhead when he got tagged? Do you know?
Gosh, I can't remember.
Because the
I can't remember, but I
acceptable
mean, it wasn't.
threshold.
It was way above the 10 to 15%.
Well, the acceptable threshold's 25 for a not-for-profit, but
He
you
was-
raise eyebrows when you're at 25, but that's
He was over
acceptable.
that. I think he was closer to 40. I think.
The one piece that you're not talking about, though, because there's a second side to that has to play into the equation you're talking about.
Sure.
We're an organization who funds. We fund $29 million into 19 agencies in Stark County that do behavioral health work. And the problem is not-for-profits are having a very hard time showing outcomes.
Yes.
And that's part of the
Yes.
problem. And if you can't show outcomes to a donor, they're not going to accept your 30% overhead because
Completely
there's
agree.
not been measurement in the past.
100% agree. And I'm very glad you brought that up. Thank you. And again, it's something that I will not speak for the agency on this, but I take, again, I get very passionate about this because a lot of times your outcomes are, again, set for you, right? So when you have to get, your funding from a government agency, they tell you how they want to measure the success of your program. I'm not saying this is you, by the way. And when the people that are telling you what success looks like are not CPST workers, are not psychiatrists or counselors that work with depression and bipolar disease on a day-to-day basis, it's very frustrating because we know that there are certain things that mean success for our clients. If our clients are able to have friends and be in a social setting, are able to walk outside at times and make their appointments with us, to pick up the phone, to get dressed in the morning. These are huge success indicators for us, but they don't necessarily fall in line with outcomes. Now, I do know that outcomes should be measurable and need to be more realistic than that, but there are a lot of outcomes that don't correlate to the patient population. And so we do find that because we are a bigger agency, we are much luckier that we are at the table a lot with our funders and with the decision makers and having those conversations and saying, please try to look at it this way. And, you know, and because we have partners like the Cleveland Clinic and Metro Health and University Hospital, again, who have large voices in the field, they help us with that. But I know that that's not the case for a lot of smaller nonprofits. And again, that for me is heartbreaking. Because when I go and visit the early learning centers and they're saying that, you know, a success factor is this, and when the kids go into kindergarten with that level, they are still 14 months behind our suburban peers. Something's got to change. So we are in the middle of doing a major shift in how we're measuring outcomes, and we're working with a lot of different for-profit and nonprofits and having, you know, scalable models. And again, it's like it's absolutely fascinating for me and exciting, and big data and small data and all the things you're seeing in the media. But you have to have a progressive board and a progressive executive team that stands behind that and is willing to take the risk. We know who we are right now, and some of the conversations we're having could put some of the things we're doing at risk. But it's where we are as an organization and what we're willing to invest in that we just feel is the right thing. But thank you. I mean,
well, you're very sophisticated, clearly. I mean, we're on the verge of defunding one of our organizations because they never provide us any data. They don't keep anything. And quite frankly, it's because of folks like them that not-for-profits take the hit that you talk about, because you know, you can't measure the heart. People will never recover from mental illness.
No.
You have mental illness all your life.
Yep.
So to a funder or a company that you're going to ask for support from, they can throw money at it all they want, and they know that it's never going to get fixed. So the story is a little bit different. But, you know, the not-for-profit realm is starting to turn and understand that they are a business. They pay for copiers, they have overhead, they pay for people and so forth. And I think it's good, and I think they need to be accountable to measurement and not just we had so many people through the door.
Absolutely. Accountability is huge.
Well, in 2009, we took $7 million worth of funding cuts on both the mental health and the drug and alcohol side. Rather than go in and say at the time it was 23 agencies, we're going to take a 10% cut across the board. We could have done it easily. We looked at every single organization and program that we fund, but we didn't do it. We asked them to measure it. We said, here are the deliverables, here are the accountables, you measure your programs against it. We literally had agencies that came to us and said, defund this program because it's not hitting it. It was that aha moment for them that they understood what measurement was.
Yeah.
It was painful, but we were all on the same team and made $7 million of cuts, and we actually had agencies thank us for doing it that way. But
Well,
that's where we have to get to, because
I
bleeding
agree.
heart doesn't get it anymore.
I agree, and I think hopefully what you'll see that we did with the merger, you'll see more of that, right? So there are a lot of nonprofits that have very similar missions that are located in, you know, similar sectors that are competing for the same exact dollars.
And
the
the
only
strong
peop-
will survive.
And the only people that get hurt are the clients, right? Because you're just giving people enough to get by instead of to grow and have that impact when you have to spread your dollars out. So even though we were financially sound, and so is Weston and so is El Barrio, we decided to come together, which is, let me tell you, not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do in for-profit. It's not an easy thing to do in nonprofit. We had a lot of stress over that, a lot of heartbreak. We're talking about social workers and teachers who, you know, it's a hard concept for them. But we don't want to fight for funding with people that believe what we believe.
Very forward thinking.
Let's just join together. And I will tell you, our strategic direction and a lot of our digital movement is based on the fact that that will not be our last merger. We know that we will partner with whomever believes what we believe and is willing to think through strategies and measure and come up with outcomes that show a major impact, we are willing to merge, grow, align, partner, whatever that term might be, but we do not believe in fighting for funding anymore. It's partnering for growth.
I'm curious, getting back to your social channels a little more. I know you said that you focus on different audiences for different channels. My organization is kind of doing that as well. How did you really determine who you were going to target on each individual? I know on Facebook you said it kind of evolved, but how going into it strategically did you determine who you were going to focus on in each channel?
So, they left that up to me because that was a part of who I was in my consulting world. So I came forward with a strategy, I explained it, I showed the demographics and how we were gonna go about it. But I do think right now, even if that's not like your wheelhouse, there is so much good literature out there that really, there have been, just in the past 2 months, great research papers that have come out that have really kind of shown this. I will say though that it's not a one size fits all. It's really not. And there are times that you have to kind of dip in and start something and see whether or not it's working or not. I'm still weary of Pinterest, again, because I love Pinterest. I have a ton of boards, but I'm not going to jump in full-fledged to Pinterest if I have the same response that I'm getting on Facebook, which is a really feel-good movement, but that is not driving impact for us. So we're playing around in Pinterest. I'm watching the analytics. If I don't see a huge uptick soon, we will exit it. So know that there's really no harm in trying it out if you use the right research to do your background at first. But pull out of it if it's not worth your time, because your personal time and investing in all of this, it has to be measured against it, right? So I always think this is my personal time that I'm not doing marketing for my firm, my organization. I'm not out in the community supporting the events or doing media relations. So is it worth my actual time?
I'm curious, do you have an app? And does anybody else here have apps?
We do not have an app.
I'm kind of with you on that. My boss really thinks that's sexy. We should be doing it.
Well, yeah,
kind of
again,
flavor of the day. But
again,
I
it's
don't
like
think we get us
Facebook.
anything.
I think that apps are amazing if it's the right reason.
Right.
For us, an app, Foursquare will do just as much as an app would for us. People have a horrific time finding all of our locations because there's 18 of us. Google Maps that we have linked in through our website and all that stuff does more than any app would right now. We work with a population that I don't believe right now the app is for. I do think it's shifting. We tried to engage parents on Facebook knowing that if that worked that way, that's how we would model our app, but it didn't work. So I'm not willing to make that investment. It's too large. We're done.
Sorry everybody, but we need to wrap up. Our next session is going to start in the auditorium in about 5 minutes.
Thank you. I'll hang around if anyone wants to.
Feel free to